Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So this video is a continuation video. This is the part 2, the sewing aspect of this video. So I actually I cut the pattern in the previous video. If you've seen that video, thank you so much for viewing and liking that video. I'm so grateful to all of you that have engaged on that video. So if you're yet to see it, I'm just going to put a link somewhere above. Just make sure you watch that video. And without saying too much, I'm just going to go ahead with this tutorial. But before then, this is my face. My name is Ini. I'm a self-taught fashion designer. I'm very passionate about sewing, and I'm very passionate about teaching other people how to sew. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to be sharing all the details how to make this dress. And if you saw my other videos, if you've watched my other videos on this channel, you know how generous I am with knowledge. So you want to stick around, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because on my analytics I can see that I have about 80% of my viewers not subscribed to my channel. Please don't do that to me. Please, you guys should help me get to 5,000 subscribers. I will be really grateful. Thank you. So to get started with this video, I'm just going to introduce to you the fabrics I am holding here. Okay, in the previous video I promised I was going to share with you the kind of fabric that is good for this dress, and this is the fabric right here, this peach fabric. I used the other fabrics because I wanted the design to be pronounced and easy to understand. So this fabric I'm holding here, the pink fabric, peach, this fabric is, I think it's called Duchess fabric. I'm not too sure, but when you get to the market, you see it is shiny a bit and it's drapey, like it's very soft, and it's going to give you this effect you can see on this video. So if you're looking for the perfect fabric to get this exact vibe that the video gave, just use this fabric, and this is the best option for you. So moving on now, this is my fabric, the fabric I used for the dress. As you can see in the thumbnail, I used these two different colors, like I said, because I wanted it to be very clear and obvious for you to see what was done on this dress. Like as you can see now, we have some flays in between the dark lines, and I'll show you how to achieve that in this video. So this is an African print fabric. I'm sure so many of you know, because my viewers, I think I have a lot of Nigerian viewers, so you guys know Ankara now. So this fabric is not so flowy like the other fabric, so that's why I'm suggesting you use a fabric that's soft and easy to flow. Okay, so I just use this for the sake of illustration. So now this is my pattern, and you can see that that's the bustier area, just like I drafted in the other video. If you've not seen that video, please try and watch that video. So this is the fabric now, and I'm going to place my fabric on a fold. So that's the right side, and I'll place it facing me and just fold it over like this. When you're cutting, you want to make sure you are cutting on the wrong side of your fabrics. Okay, so I'll just fold it like this, and since I'm getting a center, that part is going to be on a fold. That mark I made there signifies that it is a fold. So that's the center of the dress. So before I even cut this dress, before I cut anything, we need to take note of something, where the flay started from. So when you want to make this dress, you want to decide how high you want your flays to go. In this video now, you can see that it is above the hip area. So if it's for an adult, make sure you are going above the hip with about 4 inches to 4.5 inches. Okay, so since this is a miniature dress form, this is obviously a small size. I can't go up by 4 inches. If I go by 4 inches, I'm already getting to the bust area, so I had to use about 1.5 inches. So it's 1.5 inches above the hip line. Take note of that. So after marking that line above, I'll also go to the bottom part of the pattern, and I'm going to take some inches below as well. So I'm just marking that same 1.5 inches above the hip line, and I will do that for all the pattern papers. That's the pieces I'll be working with. And now at the bottom area, I'm using 0.5 inches. That's half of an inch, not even up to half of an inch. I think I used 1/4, that's 0.25 inches. But if it is an adult bar, you go down to the last part, that's the bottom part of your pattern, and go in by about 1 inch, and then you're going to connect it. That's the bottom part of your pattern paper should be 1 inch, and then at that point where we marked as the point where we want our flay to start from, you go in by maybe half of an inch and connect a slant point. But of course, this is miniature. This is a small dress form, a mini dress form, so I just used very little and I cut it off. The reason why we're cutting this off is so that you can give the flay a chance to shine. Okay, this is just to reduce a little part of the main bodies so that the flay comes into play. I hope you understand what I am saying. So this is me connecting the slant. This is just to reduce it a little. Okay, just like a dart. I don't know if I should say it's a dart, or we're just creating space for the flay to show properly. Thank you. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So after connecting these, I'm going to go ahead and do this same thing for all the parts where I'll be attaching. The only part where I'm not attaching this flay is at the zip area, which is at the back. So I went ahead, I repeated this process on all the pieces apart from the dart area. The zip area at the back. That's where I'm not attaching that flay. So once that is done and settled, I'm just going to come back now with my pattern paper and I'll drop it on this fabric and go ahead to cut. So I'm just trying to pin this up. Regardless of your expertise with sewing, it's very good to work with pins. It just makes your whole process better. So after pinning this, I'm going to add half of an inch around the area where there's going to be a joining. So this part I'm cutting now, the center part is on a fold, so I won't be adding any allowance there because obviously when I open it, it's going to be folded. So on the other part where I'll be joining, I'm adding half of an inch all around. So you can look closely and see how I am adding this half of an inch in case you've never done this before. I'm assuming I have a lot of beginners on this channel, so that's why I'm taking my time to explain this to those who are already used to it. Sorry, I'm just taking my time to explain to those who are not familiar with this. So I'm just adding half of an inch all around, and at the bottom area I'm adding 1 inch. I just felt like adding this 1 inch because I did not want the body of the dress form to be showing at all. I used the exact full length, so I just decided to add this 1 inch, and I'll be adding this 1 inch on all other patterns. So I'm just going to go ahead now and cut this out following that half of an inch I have added by the side. So just look closely and you're going to understand what's happening here. So after cutting, I'm just going to cut out the V neckline like this, following the mark I've made. So when you're sewing for an adult, you want to take note that if you don't want to add the half of an inch, that you don't want this neckline to go deeper, make sure you add half of an inch before you cut out. I hope you understand what I just said. At that point where I'm going to be adding my flare, I'm creating a notch. Yes, this is going to help me when I am attaching these pieces. So moving on, I'm going to go ahead now to cut the side pieces of the front panel. So this is the side, the part that has the curve, and I'm just placing it now on my fabric and I'm pinning it down. If you remember, when I was drafting this pattern, I put some inscriptions that helped me to remember that I don't have a sewing allowance on this fabric. So I'm going to take note of that, and I'm also going to add half of an inch at the area where there's a curve. So that's the part where I'll be adding. I decided to use 1 inch as my sewing allowance. Your sewing allowance depends on what you want and what your client wants. If you're not sure of what you're doing, that you're not sure of the person's measurements, make sure you're adding enough sewing allowance, like 2 inches or 2.5 inches. But for me, especially when I'm making my dresses, I use 1 inch and that is just fine. So I'm adding 1 inch on the sides, and this part where I'll be joining the pattern pieces together, that's where I'll join this piece together, do you understand, to form the front. I'm going to add half of an inch there, and at that curve, just take note, go down, just follow the shape and add the half of an inch all around. These things are not difficult, okay? Just make sure you're adding half of an inch everywhere. But at the armhole area, I did not add any allowance because when I was drafting the pattern, I did not plan to add anything to that part. So that 1 inch at the bottom as well, I'm going to add it to the bottom because I want everything to come out looking uniform. You don't want to add some allowance on one pattern, then on the other pattern, you forget to add. You're going to run into trouble. In fact, the best thing to do is draft your pattern correctly before you place it on your fabric, especially if you're a beginner, so that you don't get confused. So now I'm just going to cut out everything I have marked out, and at that curvy area I just want to curve my hands properly to avoid any pointy edges. When you're making a bustier, you don't want to cut any part to have sharp pointy edges, because when you are joining, you're going to hate the outcome. You will not like it. So I'm creating a notch at the point again where my flare is going to start from on this pattern. Another important place you need to notch while making a bustier is your under bust point. You want to mark this point on both patterns, the front patterns where you have the curves, okay? Because that's the point where you need to match up first before you start stitching. All these little tips help you and save you from unnecessary stress while making bustiers. Okay, so moving on now, I'm just going to continue and I'm going to cut out the back pieces. So for the back pieces, no big deal. I added my sewing allowance. I added my zip allowance already, so I'm not going to be adding any allowance at that point. I'm only going to be adding 1/2 inch at the center part where I will be joining to the other side pieces of this the back. I hope you understand. Just like the front, you don't need to get confused with what I just said. I'm just adding 1/2 inch because I will be joining as well. So I'm just cutting out at that exact zip point because I already added the zip allowance on the pattern. My 1 inch at the bottom also is another very important thing I must not forget. I'm adding that 1 inch because the plan is to increase the length of this gown. Okay, so I'll go ahead now and I'll cut out, and that's all for this piece. I'll cut out the other side parts for the back, and that'll be all for the cutting. So now remember, I told you I will not be joining any flare at the zip point area. I'm just going to notch the opposite side where I don't have a zip, which is the dart area where my flare is going to start from. A little mark I'll just make at that point. Okay, so now the back piece where I have the side pieces of the back, I'm going to add 1 inch just like I added for the front side pieces. You don't want to add a different allowance for your front side piece and then you add another different amount of allowance for your back side pieces. They sure have to be the same to avoid issues. Okay, so at this center part as well, because I'll be joining it together, I need to add 1/2 inch so that I can join it together. So these are my pieces, and I'll just go ahead and show you how to cut the flare. The flare is actually easy to cut. You can use the desired fabric of choice. Make sure the fabric is light and flowy, just like I said. Now what I need to do is to take note of that point where the flare is going to start and measure how many inches I have at that point. This is going to guide me to cut out the flare. So I'm just going to fold my fabric now in bias form. So this is 6.6 is what I had after measuring. So fold your fabric like this to get a sharp pointy edge like this, and then place your tape at the top part like this and measure what you have all around. It depends on how much fabric you have to work with. If you have a lot of fabric, you can actually work with this fabric as it is. You are going to understand why I'm saying this now, because I will be splitting this fabric now into 2. So it depends on what you want to achieve and how much fabric you have to spare. Okay, so this is it. After cutting, after marking, I'm going to cut out at that point to create something that looks like this. So this is what it looks like, and now I'm going to split it. I'm going to split it into 2. So this is what I meant when I said it depends on how much fabric you have to work with. If you have a lot of fabric, and don't forget you'll be making this for an adult, it's going to take a lot of fabric. So you just want to find out what works for you. So I divided this into 2, and one is going to be in between these 2 like this while I join. Another one is going to be in between the other left side dart. This means I need to cut 6 pieces of this flare because I will be having 6 flares on this dress. That is 2 for the front dart, 2 for the back dart, 2 on the side. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So now I have to go ahead and get 6 pieces of this flare. So after cutting, this is what I had. I made sure I have 6 pieces of that to work with, just as I explained. And now it's time to show you the main deal in this dress. That is the joining of these flares. You really want to pay attention at this point because this joining can be very tricky. As a beginner, two things I struggled with the most was fixing zips and sewing sharp pointy edges just like this. So if you just understand the technique, you're not going to find it difficult at all. So I'm just taking out my pins now, and I'm going to open these and show you what we have. So this is what I meant when I said two at the front, two at the back, and two at the sides. This is the two sides where it's going to be. So one is going to be placed like this, and you want to make sure you are placing this right side facing right side because it's going to be sandwiched like this in between. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is to place this flares at the side like this to get to that point where we want our flare to reach. It doesn't matter if you have excess below, but just make sure you are placing it to start from that point where you want the flare to start. So after placing it like this, now I'm just going to, I also placed one at the side pieces. You know, we said we'll be having two at the side pieces, two at the sides as well. So I'm just going to place them like this, and I'll take it to my sewing machine and attach it like this first of all before I show you the next thing to do. So this is me attaching them one after the other. And please take note, I'm attaching it with 1/2 inch because we put 1/2 inch as the extra on this pattern pieces. Okay, so make sure you're using the same allowance you kept. In case you put 0.75 inches as your allowance, make sure you are taking out 0.75 inches. These are one of the things that affects your sewing and makes your dress to come out with a different size that you bargained for. Make sure you're taking out the allowance you put. So after sewing, now this is what it looks like. I've been able to place them on all these patterns. So by now, if you have been watching this video from the beginning, there's no way you should not know how we got everything you can see on this table. So now once this is achieved, I'm just going to put aside the back piece so that we can focus on the front, and so that everything is easy to understand and is not overwhelming. So now, just as I would normally attach my front piece, that's to get my bustier, I'm going to place this right side facing right side, and I always like to start my bust that sewing from the under. This helps me to avoid any issues. And of course, I've matched my under busts together before I got to match everything up like this. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So now I'm just going to pin, because pinning helps you to see what you would get by the time you are done. So I'm taking the other part which is free, and I'm attaching it on the other parts. It is when I get to this point that it will be like a T-junction where they will now meet together. I don't know if you understand this, but if you don't understand, you might just need to watch this again and understand what I just did here. Okay? Because you want the flare to be in between the two pieces. So this is what I got, and I'm going to repeat this same process for all the other parts. So at this point, I was done joining one side of the darts, and you can see what it looks like. I just decided to place it on my dress form to see what I got already. So you can see that the measurements I used in the previous video were accurate. You can see how everything just sits properly. You can see the V-neck line. You can see that by the time I join the other part, we'll have a complete front panel. So sometimes when you join your bustiers, you might get some extra. Just make sure you are cutting off that little extra. Make sure it's no more than 1/2 inch. If you have more than 1/2 inch or so, maybe you didn't join it correctly, but sometimes you have some little excess. Okay, so that's just what I was trimming off now. So now go ahead and join the other part of the front bustier. Okay, so it doesn't matter if you have some extra at the bottom. It doesn't matter, just leave that one for now. When you are done, we are going to trim them together, trim it off. So create notches and give your dress a very good ironing. So you cannot be sewing without ironing, because your ironing helps you to relax all the seams and everything is going to come out well. Because if this were a big size dress, you see that the bustier would have formed already, the curve would form already. Okay, so now I'll repeat the same process for the other piece, and now I'm just going to try and explain. I turn this over to the other side right sides facing right sides, and I placed the flay like this. So if you do not understand the first one, you can just look at this and catch the gist. So at that point, I'm just going to add it, and this is what it looks like after doing it. So you can see that my front piece was available and perfect at this point. And the extra I got at the side was the 1 inch I initially put for the sewing allowance. Can you see how perfect everything came out? So if you've not watched that video on the drafting, please make sure you watch that. That video is so rich and it's going to help you with formulas that will save your life. Okay. So at this point now, I made an adjustment here. So the adjustment I made at this point is that the side patterns where I added 1 inch allowance, I was not supposed to add the flay with half of an inch, because on this part I had 1 inch. So I needed to clean it off, that's take it off and attach it on the 1 inch point, so that by the time I'm joining the front and the back, everything is going to lap. I really hope this makes sense. So this is the adjustment I made at this point. I did it for the both sides, and this is what I got. This was the final outcome. I joined the dress at the shoulder area, and that was it. So for the final contribution to this dress is, when you're making this for someone, please make sure you're using a bias, a matching bias, to finish the bottom part. And for the insides, make sure you're using your weaving machine. And of course, the bustier area, maybe you would have padded it. Make sure you cut out a lining, and it might not be a full lining, it can be half lining or something like that. So this is the dress on the dress form, and I just made sure I trimmed off all the excess, and it's normal if you have some excess. That's how flays can be sometimes. So just trim off what you have below, provided everything starts at the point you want. Everything is perfect. It doesn't matter if you have some excess below. So this is everything. And guys, if you learned anything in this video, you just need to give this video a huge thumbs up, because it takes a lot for me to do these voiceovers. Okay, see the armhole, everything perfect. This means that all the formulas and everything I used in my previous video are correct and trusted. So guys, see you in my next video. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, turn on notification bell. In fact, that notification bell is very important. Please turn on your notification bell so that you get notified. You'll be the first person to know when I upload a video. Thank you so much. See you in my next one. Bye.